posting the colors for us and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for being here. It's a busy time, and it's great to see you all here. Thank you for joining us. It's like a really big room now. All right, you see up here that there's an announcement for you to download a QR code reader. If you have a chance during this evening's presentation and you have a smart device, if you could download a QR reader, because we're going to do a survey at the end, an individual survey and a group consensus survey, and you can use the internet link that we provide you, or you can use the QR code, or we'll have some paper copies as well for you to use. We're here this evening to talk to you about the Fort Bend ISD Safety and Security Plan. And this is a plan that is really helping us to create a starting point for our planning for the future to ensure that our students and staff in Fort Bend are safe and secure. You can see on the screen, it kind of looks like an EKG or a heartbeat. When we think of the heartbeat and the lives that we're protecting every day, keeping our students and our faculty safe and secure, it's the most important thing. We can't teach and students can't learn if they're not safe and secure, and our teachers certainly can't teach if they're not in a safe environment. So we appreciate you being here this evening and providing input throughout this process. I want to give you a little bit of history on this year and what we have done this year in terms of strategic planning at Fort Bend. We started in the summer and really began engaging the community in September of this school year in a facilities master planning process. And through that process, the needs of each facility were assessed. What's the capacity of students that can be accommodated in buildings? What's the state of those buildings? What are the needs of the buildings? So really the needs assessment throughout that process serves as the baseline moving forward for where are we right now in terms of safety and security in the district. And Chief David Ryder, who will present to you this evening, will share with you then how our needs, what our needs are, and how that aligns with best practices and what we need to consider moving forward. Throughout the strategic planning process, for the facilities plan, we ensured that we stuck with the Board of Trustees' core beliefs and commitments. That's really the frame that we use to ensure that all of our decisions were aligned with our core beliefs and commitments. And we continue to do that through this process as we engage with you and move forward in making decisions. We're driven by our core beliefs and commitments and by the mission and vision of the district, our guiding principles, if you will, as we move forward. We're replicating the community engagement process that we went through with the facilities master planning process. And that's collecting the data and then bringing the data to the community and explaining where are we, what are our options for moving forward, and then getting feedback from you, the community members. We started about 2 weeks ago in presenting to our steering committee. We had a steering committee that really worked tirelessly over several months to help with the facilities master plan. And thankfully, many of them volunteered to come back again after many nights and long hours of work on the facilities plan. They were eager and ready to go again. I know there's a couple here. If you just wave, steering committee members, back joining us again to help us out with the safety and security plan. So we met with them and briefed them on where we are and what we're doing. They provided excellent input to help us kind of shape our discussion with you in the community and provide information to you that will be beneficial moving forward. We met with our principals after our monthly ATM meeting so that we could gather campus-specific information in terms of their beliefs of how safe and secure their particular campuses are. We've also met with the budget committee in the district. We presented at a board workshop, and last night we met at Willow Ridge High School. Tonight, of course, we're talking with you, and then tomorrow evening we'll be at Bowie Middle School for making sure we hit all of the areas in the district. After Thursday evening's meeting, we'll be posting the video of tonight's meeting on the website and a link to the same survey that you'll take this evening so that folks who aren't able to come can get online, learn about what the options are, and provide input to us as well so we get the full voice of the community. Once we receive all of the input through those surveys, we will collect the data and then go back to the steering committee, and they'll help us to finalize the safety and security master plan that will be taken to the board in June. The safety team is made up of executive team members and leaders in the district who've worked on the plan and are continuing to work together to gather data and go through the input, and will be going through the input from the community and helping to shape the plan. And we're very honored this evening to have Chief David Ryder with us, and he's going to give you the specifics about this plan and help you to see where we are and where we need to be as a district.
Thank you very much. I think this one's worth it. Okay. All right, so we're going to overcome those. Good evening. Thank you for being here. My name is David Ryder. For those that don't know me, I've spent the last 24 years in law enforcement. The last 18 has been in school district law enforcement. Spent 12 and a half with Austin ISD, and I've been blessed to be here for the last 4.5 years. And I know that we have some fantastic officers and fantastic staff members and community members, and I know we're all in this together. So really excited to be able to show this to you and to talk to you a little bit about our safety and security master plan. So I want to start with a little bit of background information. In 2002, the Homeland Security Act was written as a result of the September 11th attack. And so that Homeland Security Act identified school districts as governmental entities, which means that we have to follow the regulations that come down through the Homeland Security Act as they relate to terrorist events. We all know that schools are not exempt from terrorist events, but when we think about violence in our schools, the first thing we think about is school shootings. And really, I mean, those are tragic events when they occur, so really they're pretty far and few between. We have about 10 or 12 a year across the United States, but we deal with far more other issues in safety and security on a daily basis, even in our own schools here. So when we talk about safety and security tonight, we are talking about an all-hazards approach, an approach that covers those intruders in our campuses and the possibility of a school shooting. But we also want to cover everything else that can be a possibility. Severe weather, tornadoes, hurricanes. We're much more prone to that than anything else. We want to talk about the irate parents or stragglers that come on our campus. So we want to talk about an all-hazards approach. When we talk about this all-hazard approach, we talk about a lot in our department from a 40,000-foot view. We have a campus that makes decisions, and they're made for that campus. But when we start talking about safety and security, we want to think from the 40,000-foot view. We want to think from the top and look at how it impacts the district as a whole. So tonight, you're going to hear options. We've not decided on any of these. Well, let me take that back. Some of them we haven't decided on, but those are the ones that don't cost a lot of money or don't cost any money at all. We are presenting these to you so you can tell us what you think we should be focusing on. Okay? So as we look at this, these interrelated elements, and we look at all these options about what would make our schools safer, or what we think might make our schools safer, it's based on best practice in our industry. It's based on our professional knowledge and our experience. It's based on community input. It's based on third-party evaluations and other companies that come in and do that for us and provide that service. So that's kind of where we're at. When we talk about the best practices and emergency management, we're talking about 4 interrelated elements. And those interrelated elements are infrastructure, and we're going to talk about those first. Crisis communication and notification. Those are a little bit different. One is a two-way communication, and one is just I'm giving you information and you can't respond back. Staffing is the third interrelated element. We have to have the right people in place to carry out the plan, and then policies and procedures is the fourth interrelated element. Every safety and security plan has these 4 interrelated elements in it, or it's not going to be a viable plan. So our first interrelated element is going to be infrastructure. When we talk about infrastructure, our goal is to narrow the risk of threats by building or putting things in place that keep those threats from happening. It's mitigation. And so what I want you to think about are these concentric circles of protection. In other words, the more layers of protection we put in and around our campuses, the better served our students and staff will be when it comes to safety and security. So in order to talk about these in a not in a obscure manner, into a manner where we can follow it, we're going to think about it as from the bus all the way into the center of the school. Okay? So as we start talking about these, you're going to be a student on a bus. What are the layers of protection as we move from that bus all the way into the Okay, so the first thing in our infrastructure that we want to talk about are school bus camera systems. Right now, we have 467 buses in our fleet. 140 buses have video capability, and the others do not. We use the video off of those school buses for a number of things. Investigations, maybe it's just a criminal investigation, maybe it's just a disciplinary investigation. But we use the video for a number of things. And we know video helps deter some behavior. So we want to, our goal is to put video on all of our buses. The way our buses operate now, the way the video is now, the video is stored on a hard drive on the bus. So if we have an issue on a bus and we need to retrieve that video, we have to go out to the bus, pull the hard drive out, put it into a computer, download the information, and then recover the video at that point. What we'd like to do is move it to a wireless system for all of our buses. And what that means is when the buses pull up into a wireless connectivity, our district wireless connectivity, it'll automatically download the video that's been stored on there from that route into that computer system. So it's already immediately available, and our system administrators in transportation or the police department or whoever would be able to have access to that video very quickly. So it's much more efficient. Excuse me. The video on our buses, those 327 buses that don't have it, as those buses go out of service and we buy new buses coming into service, we buy buses with video capability on them. So through attrition, we are including video in our buses, but you can see that's going to take quite a while to get there. So that's one of our goals, is to move the wireless capability and 100% video capability in our buses. Our next infrastructure is global positioning systems, or GPS. And we want to put that on our buses as well in conjunction with. So let me stop here and say that a lot of things that you see tonight, whether it's in the infrastructure or the staffing or the communication or the policies, all of these pieces kind of fit together. When you think about safety and security, it's really like a jigsaw puzzle. And so one piece doesn't make the puzzle. You're not going to be able to understand what the puzzle is supposed to look like if you only put one piece in place. But if you're missing a couple of pieces, you're going to be able to tell there's some gaps there. And so when we talk about safety and security, we think about it in terms of a jigsaw puzzle. And sometimes we have the piece in place, it just needs to be turned a different direction so that it fits. And so all of these things work in conjunction with each other, and you're going to see that throughout the presentation. So currently we have no GPS on our buses, and GPS will allow us to do several things. First of all, the system administrator, that's basically going to be transportation department. It's not a police function, but transportation will be able to see if the drivers are obeying the speed limits, okay? If they stop at the bus stops that they're supposed to stop at, how long they stop at the stops. Believe it or not, we get parent complaints where they said the bus never stopped at the stop. Well, now we'll be able to go back and tell. It's not a he said, she said. There's data that says, yes, the bus stopped, and no, it did not. We can tell how fast they're driving. GPS has a few functions in it that are critical. And so that's one of the goals, is to put GPS tracking on our buses. There are two types of GPS tracking, and so the cost is a little bit different. And we intentionally leave the cost out of all of these options for a reason. We don't want you to think about it in terms of, well, what's it going to cost your school? We want to create a standard here of safety and security across the district. And so no matter which student goes to which school, they all have the same level of security. They should have that. And so when we talk about cameras, when we talk about wireless internet, when we talk about whatever we talk about tonight, everything should be a standard across the district. So that's why cost is not included in this. We want your ideas on what these standards should be. So GPS is one of the things that we want to get to on all of our buses. Our next related element are security camera systems. Every school has their own security cameras, but they're all kind of their own standalone systems. So that's a decentralized system. Every campus records video and it goes to a computer in that campus. Now the administrators have access to that, our dispatchers have access to that, so we can pull the recorded video if we need to. We can look at the live video if we need to. It's very cumbersome the way it's set up now. We have to log into different login addresses to get to a certain bank of cameras. So for instance, Columbus High School might have 3 different logins for sets of cameras. And so you can't log in one time and look at all the cameras. If I'm looking for somebody on this campus, I have to log in and check those 12 cameras. If I don't see anything, log out, log into another one, check those 12 cameras, and hope I'm going to catch what I'm looking for on those cameras. We want to go to a system that's a centralized system where everything is in one database. Everything goes to one centralized place, and that's going to be downtown in our IT center. We also want to move from an analog system, which are those kind of grainy, fuzzy pictures that you get when you kind of zoom in, to an IP system, IP cameras. Those are internet protocol cameras. And those give you a much better evidentiary quality picture. And so one of the things when we started looking at these security options, we were thinking about a standard of 150 to 200 cameras per high school. And that sounded like a good number. That's an industry best practice. We looked at other school districts in the area. Katy is one of them. But the other day, I was in a meeting, and the question came up, what about your image quality? And I think as we talk through these things, that's why it's good to have these conversations. I think our image quality should be our standard. Don't we want to be able to see who's in our building and who our visitors are as they come and go, as opposed to putting a certain number of cameras in that aren't going to give us a good image quality. So we can have fewer cameras, but better cameras, provided they give us the better image quality. So I think as we move forward, we want to move forward with image quality in mind as our goal. We want to improve our coverage on each campus. We want to provide that advanced camera technology. There are cameras out there that are 180-degree cameras. There are cameras out there that are 360-degree cameras that can hang in the middle of the ceiling and capture this whole cafeteria. So we're looking at options. There's costs associated with each one, but we're looking at options. And so we want to hear from you what you think a good option would be. Okay. Our next interrelated element is security fencing. We hear a lot about security fencing around, especially around our elementary schools. We know that there's some schools in our neighborhoods over here that don't have adequate fencing around their playgrounds, around the portables. And so we've identified those schools, and we've identified how many feet of fencing we think each one will need. So we've shown you this up here. 41 elementary campuses need 36,000 linear feet of fence. The middle schools, there are 11 middle schools. They need over 33,000 linear feet of fence. And 11 high schools, over 65,000 linear feet of fence. So the question becomes, do we want 20 miles of chain link fence, or do we want ornamental fence, which is a cost? Don't forget that with chain link fence, somebody's going to have to weed eat, either mechanically or chemically, a new 20-some-odd miles of fence. Somebody's going to have to go and pick the trash up that collects at the base of the fence. So there are a number of factors that are associated with these, but we know from hearing from the community that fencing should be considered. And we think fencing it needs to be considered, but we want to hear from you on how much it needs to be considered. And maybe we just fence certain areas instead of teacher parking lots, because there's going to be a gap where the cars drive in and out. We can't fence the whole thing. So do we really need to put fencing up around there, or do we just put it around the playgrounds and around, the places where the kids are likely to be? So those are our goals for security fencing. The next interrelated element is video intercom system. The video intercom system is a device that mounts into the wall by the front doors or by the exterior doors of schools. We see these a lot at our elementary schools, and we would like to include at least one of these at every school. Now, middle schools and high schools, the students are a little bit more mobile, so we would probably need more video intercoms, probably around the exterior doors, so that those staff members inside the school can see the students that are coming in. Let's say they're late, or they went outside for something and they're coming back. We want those exterior doors to stay locked. So during the day, they have card access on them, but during the day, during certain times, they're programmed to stay open so that kids can move back and forth freely between classes. But during that class, when that class change is over, those doors are locked. And so the video intercom would allow somebody in the campus in the front office to see who's at that door before they let them in. Right now, we can't do that, and those doors end up getting propped open. So our goal is to install video intercoms at each campus. Access control. All of our staff members have an access control card, and the benefit of the access control card is we can do away with keys for the exterior doors, master keys. We know that when we have employees that no longer work for us, and they have a big key ring of all these master keys, and they don't turn them in, or they seem to have lost 2 or 3, it's very difficult to track that and find them. So key inventory control is a big issue for us as far as safety and security. So we want everybody to have card access and improve or add to the number of card access readers we have at our schools. We want to bring that up to a higher number on each campus. And the benefit of the card access is it gives you a date and a timestamp and a name for each person that uses that card at that card reader. And then when an employee no longer works for us, our system administrator can go in and deny access or cut that card off, and then that card doesn't work anymore. So even though they have a card, they're not going to be able to get into a building. So those are the benefits of having this as opposed to having a hard key. So we want to standardize the number of card access ports per campus for elementaries, for middle schools, and for high schools. And we know that there are some places inside the school that could probably use these. The vault, okay, where campuses store PTA funds and band money and things like that. Computer labs, the MDF and IDF rooms, those are places that normally just have a key. And so we want to make sure that they have a computerized key card to keep people out with just a key. Okay. Security vestibules. Several of our schools have security vestibules now. I think 29 of them, and we want to improve on those, but we have 42 campuses that don't have security vestibules at all. A security vestibule allows us to better manage our visitors as they're coming into our schools. We want to have an inviting area out of the weather, but an area that's secure. And so it allows our front office staff to systematically manage our visitors as they come in and before they go into the rest of the school. The security vestibule at some of our campuses might consist of just a table or a desk and nothing else over it. And so if there was somebody that wanted to do some harm, they could jump over that and get past it and then have access to the school. So we want to improve on those. We want to put something up, maybe some plexiglass or something, maybe a framed window, something that's going to keep them from being able to just jump over that desk. Okay, we got to keep that in mind. And so those are some of the things that we want to do to improve the ones we have. For the ones that we don't have, that don't have a security vestibule, we're going to go ahead and build out a full vestibule. And that's going to require card access on those doors as well. Then the person that works at that school on the other side of the vestibule, once they manage those visitors, maybe through a sliding glass window or something, they go through Raptor or they check in the right way, then they can buzz them through the door and they go to whatever appointment they have in the school. Impact resistant window film. This is something, again, it dovetails right into the security vestibules and other places at the school. We saw in Sandy Hook where that individual shot at a window and it shattered. It didn't have any film on it. It shattered and he was able to walk through it. Okay? We want to mitigate that. We want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So one of the ways we can do that is putting some window film on our vestibule windows. But when we look at bulletproof window film versus hurricane-resistant window film, for instance, bulletproof window film is very, very thick, and it's very difficult to see through. It's kind of foggy. It's like looking through those frosted shower doors. Okay, so it defeats the purpose of our clerks in the front being able to see who's coming into the vestibule, because they're not going to be able to see through there. So we know that hurricane-rated window film is rated for 2x4s, tree limbs, debris traveling at hurricane-force speeds and smashing into windows. and it's designed to shatter but not fall apart. And so we know that that's going to deter and delay somebody who's trying to get in through that window. Okay? So we want to explore the option of putting some hurricane-resistant window film on those vestibules. It's much thinner, but it's very strong. It's applied directly to the window, and it's see-through. You can't even tell it's on there. And so when you hit it with a hammer or try to smash it out, it's just gonna look like that, and you're not gonna get through it. So that's gonna give us time to get to that individual and figure out why they're trying to break through the window. And we want to deter and delay somebody trying to get in, so that's our goal. Radio frequency identification technology, this is RFID technology. This has been tested in some schools across the country. It's not very popular right now, but it's an option, so we wanted to talk about it. RFID technology is a technology that we can use in conjunction with our ID cards. This technology is either passive or active card readers, and they interact with a wireless network in the school. So basically what would happen is everybody who's in the school that has the RFID technology embedded in their ID card, when they're in a location, their card is reading to a wireless internet port in that area. So your system administrator in the school would be able to see green flashes on the computer screen that shows all the cards are okay and people are where they're supposed to be. Now, you have a student that comes from one campus to another, and they're trespassing. Their card is not set to read at that school, so their card is going to pick up the system, but it's going to flash red. So our system administrators are going to know right away that somebody doesn't belong on our campus that has a card. So that is one advantage. Another advantage of our students having the RFID technology in their student IDs, when we have an evacuation of a building, when we do a fire drill, it's good for our system administrator, the principal, or whoever, to look at the system and immediately tell if there's a card in the building and generally where it is. It'll read within about 200 feet of where the card is. So if there's a student that's in the library and they heard the fire drill, and they say, "It's just a fire drill, I'm not going." Or they're hiding in the bathroom, or whatever. Or they may have just left their card in their backpack and it's in the locker. And that's a possibility too. But it would be nice for us to know that. So if we have a severe weather event or evacuation of a building, we'd be able to tell very quickly if we saw a card still flashing on that screen. The other thing that RFID can do on the IDs for our teachers and for our staff members is their IDs would have a series of 3 buttons embedded in the card. And when you program them a certain way and you push them in a certain order, they emit an alarm signal to the system administrator. It doesn't make a sound, but the teacher could have an irate parent in a parent conference. They could have a student that's not doing what they're supposed to do. And they can push the buttons just like this, like I just did on mine. It didn't have buttons in it, but similar to that. And it would send a message to the administrator in the office that says, "I need help." And now the administrator would know to go down there and find out what's going on. And that would keep them from having to call somebody with a wall phone or a walkie-talkie or something like that. So that's one application. The other thing you can do is on the back of your RFID card, you can put a barcode on it. So as the students go through the lunch lines at every level, the cafeteria workers can add up what's on their tray. They swipe the barcode across the reader and it automatically deducts from their account and they go sit down and enjoy their lunch. It would speed up our lunch lines, make lunches go a lot smoother. That's one option. The other thing, like we said with transportation, they can use it to swipe on getting on a bus. If it turns green, the bus driver knows that they're supposed to be on the bus. If it turns red, they're not supposed to be on that bus. When they get off the bus, they can swipe it. When it turns green, it acknowledges they got off the bus. Now, couple that with GPS and our real-time data, and when we have those 15 missing elementary school kids that first week of school next year, which we have every day the first week, we bless our hearts. They just get off at the wrong place, or they don't get on the right bus, or whatever. They're elementary, and it's new to them. But what we end up having to do from the police side is we have to call that bus driver at home. Because by the time the parents realize that they're missing, the bus driver's gone home. So we have to call them and say, hey, do you remember on your route possibly a student that was about this big? They probably don't know their names yet. He might have been wearing these clothes. And do you happen to remember where he got off the bus? And that's how we have to start looking for him. So if we had the RFID technology, it would send, I think it actually sends text messages to the parents if you want, that says your child just got on the bus, your child just got off the bus, your child just entered the school, your child just exited the school. That's a pretty neat feature. So it's a possibility. Transportation, let's see. The other aspect of RFID are asset tags. You know as well as I do, we just, those of you on the steering committee, we just implemented a facilities master plan, and we'll just approve that. So we're about to put a lot of money into our facilities and continue to do that. We want to make sure that those assets are protected. And so the RFID asset tags attach to our computers, they attach to our projectors, they attach to those things that cost our taxpayers a lot of money. And so what happens is when they leave that area, when those projectors mysteriously drill days and get up and walk out of that room, it sends an alert to the system administrator, and we know right then and there that it's missing. And from that point, we can tie that in back to the cameras, and we can see who was in that area and at what time, and then we can do a much better job of recovering that property. So those are a few options for the RFID. The wireless network coverage, we talked about that a little bit earlier, and you'll see how we need the full 100% coverage wireless network in our schools. We don't have that currently. That is something that our technology department would like to implement. And again, it would dovetail very nicely with other aspects of our overall safety and security plan. Crisis communication and notification. This is our second interrelated element. And communication and notification are separate. We're going to talk about them separately. The ability to communicate with staff during emergency is paramount. We have to be able to talk to staff and figure out what's going on in an emergency. And so one of the ways that we'll do that is through a crisis communication system. Go ahead. The communication devices that we've looked at, there are a couple. One of them, they're both basically pendants that hang on a teacher's lanyard. So we don't want a teacher that has to carry around a radio all day long. Okay? We want to make it simple and easy. These are pendants that hang on their lanyard, and they're not very big, but there's two different kinds. One of them is an audio enhancement pendant, and so it projects just like a microphone, just like I'm talking now. Everybody in the back can hear me just as well as everybody in the front. So think about that from a classroom standpoint. A teacher that's trying to talk to, teach in front of the kids. If the kids are being a little bit noisy, I have to yell to reach the kids in the back. Well, the kids in the front are already getting yelled at. So the audio enhancement device allows our teachers to talk normal, just like this. And it's just a pendant that hangs around their neck, and the kids in the back can hear. The flip side of that is when they have an emergency, either in their hallway, in their classroom, there's a panic button on there, an emergency button. And when they push it, it doesn't transmit any sound. Nobody knows that they pushed it because there's all kinds of buttons on there, volume buttons and things like that. So when they push that, now they can talk into that, and they can talk to us. We can program them to talk to the police, or talk to a system administrator, or tell what's going on. So we have communication with them, and we know what the problem is, and that saves us a lot of time, and our administrators a lot of time when they're responding to a classroom. The other type of communication device that we've looked at is very similar to that. It just doesn't have the audio enhancement feature in it. It looks like, remember the pagers we used to all have? They were about 1 inch, about 2 inch, years and years ago we had pagers. Well, that's about the size of it. And they're actually Motorola radios. They're two-way radios. They're about this big, and they clip onto your lanyard. And so there are several different talk groups in there, and we can actually program them and talk group to talk directly to our police department. So as we're responding to the school, and there's a teacher that's in a crisis there at the school, we can actually talk directly to that teacher in that classroom on our police radio. And we can get real-time information and know exactly where they are in the school and what the issue is as we're responding. That is a huge advantage, both to the students, the staff, and to us. So those are some options that we're looking at. They're not cheap, but they are options. So And the other good thing about those is the wireless communication device, the second one I was talking about, can be used outside the building as well. So as the teachers are out on the playground and they see somebody coming over that new fence that we just built, okay, you know there's a problem. So they can immediately hit the button and call inside because it's working off their wireless network. And if we put that 100% wireless network coverage in, they'll be able to call the front office and say, somebody just jumped the fence on the playground, go and lock it. Now, they can do what they need to do, the rest of the school's secure, and we just save lives potentially. So that's an option. The notification systems that we want to talk about, these are programmable systems to alert the campus of some impending emergency. Maybe there's severe weather, maybe it's a tornado, maybe it's a hurricane, something is coming, and we want to get a message to them right away. So you see the scrolling LED boards like this, they're already in use. Some of these systems use those. Some use these in conjunction with a small call box with a strobe light in the front office with a message board on that. And so our dispatcher could send a message to one school or a group of schools and hit send, and it goes directly to them, and it starts scrolling across the LED, or it flashes in the office, and it gives directions to them. It tells them, tornado is headed your way, go into severe weather, shelter in place. Now, some of them have a return on there, so to speak, where they have to acknowledge that they got the message. That way we know that they got it, and that's how they communicate back to us. But there's no verbal communication. So it's a notification system, just like the scrolling message board is up there. It's happy birthday. It's a notification system, but it can't communicate back with us. But we want to build in redundancy in there. So if we have a communication system and a notification system, it's much faster than a phone tree. I'll tell you right now, the way that we operate, if we have a tornado that's been sighted, and in the 4.5 years I've been here, we've had several tornadoes sighted during severe weather incidents, our dispatcher, bless her heart, has to call all 15 schools that are in that area where that tornado is at and try to get a hold of somebody and explain, there's a tornado headed your way, it's been sighted, you need to go and shelter in place. Really? What are you talking? We don't have time to answer questions. Okay. So this will save us a lot of time. Okay. Two-way radio replacement. We know that the FCC has implemented a narrow banding requirement, which means that they're trying to squeeze down as many radio channels as they can to get more radio channels in the pipe, so to speak. So what they did was they said that they gave an unfunded mandate, which is typical, an unfunded mandate that said in 2013 we have to switch all of our police radios, all of our bus transportation radios, everything over to what's called an APEX, or a digital system, in order for them to work. Well, a lot of fire departments, volunteer fire departments, smaller agencies, they couldn't make that transition. And they were going to go out of business because they didn't have any radios to talk to anybody. So the FCC backed off and they said, okay, now we mean it's going to be 2017. So from the police department standpoint, from the transportation standpoint, when we buy radios, when we hire new officers, when we outfit them and we buy radios that go out, we're buying the new radios that'll make the transition, but it's going to be a process that we have to finish out before 2017. And you saw all those 467 buses are going to have to do the same thing. So at some point in 2015, 2016, we're going to start thinking about funding for how are we going to replace the remaining radios that we don't get out through attrition. So that is going to be a vital piece of our safety and security. Staffing is our third interrelated element. We know that the plan is not going to work without the right people in place. And so when we talk about staffing, our safe and secure learning environment begins with the individual. Our superintendent is very big on safety and security, very supportive, and he allowed us to create an emergency management coordinator position, one that our district has never had before. Most cities, counties, and big districts have their own emergency management coordinator. So this person is Steve Dancer in our department, and Steve deals with everything emergency management related for our district. We're going to talk about some of the things that he does, but he makes sure that all the training is going to be up to date. He makes sure all the emergency operation plans for every single school is up to date and is in tip-top shape. There are so many different things that he does in relation to emergency management. And so we hit the ground running with that this year. The life safety systems manager is something else that we didn't have. And so Mr. Ernie Rodriguez is now our life safety systems manager. And life safety systems includes all of our intrusion alarms, all of our fire alarms, all of our part access systems, all of our cameras, well over 2,000 cameras in the district, and video intercoms, hood vents in the kitchen, if they have a fire in the kitchen, a number of things that have to do with life safety. Mr. Rodriguez is now in charge of making sure all those are up to date and in good working order. So those are already created, but that is part of our safety plan. So it's important for you to know that those are already in place. But our emergency management coordinator would like to implement an emergency management liaison. And we've asked all the principals, I've talked to all the principals at a principals meeting, and asked them to be thinking about one person on their campus that is good with emergency management and that can interact with our emergency management coordinator, take the information that he gives them, and they pass it on to the rest of the campus. So when we talk about training, when we talk about helping with our security audits, when we talk about doing all those things that are emergency management related, then we have one person in each campus to talk to and to deal with, instead of, well, I'm dealing with it today, or I'm dealing with it, or just whoever answers the phone. So we have a specific person. We're going to identify those people from each campus, bring them in, give them specific training on emergency management, and then kind of be our shepherds out in the field, so to speak, for emergency management. So it'll require no additional staff, but it will allow us to push out emergency management concepts to our campuses in a much quicker, much more reliable fashion. Our police patrol operation. Currently, Fort Bend ISD Police has no patrol operation. We have 48 officers. All of our officers are stationed in middle schools or high schools, or they're investigators, or they're administrative folks. We answered about 31,000 calls for service last year with 48 people. 31,000 calls for service. And when you look at the statistics, and I've looked at them since 2009, every single year, we average about 38% of those 31,000 calls, 38% of those come in after 5 o'clock in the afternoon and before 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. Okay, almost 40% of our calls for service come in when we don't have anybody scheduled to work. So those are the missing kids on the school bus. Those are the kids that go home and tell mom they've been assaulted and mom wants to make a report. Those are the kids that go home and say, oh, I'm missing my cell phone, it must have got stolen in school, so I want to make a report. Those are a number of things, and bus accidents, things like that. And we don't have anybody to answer those calls. So what we have to do right now is we either assign somebody to work overtime for the afternoon shift, which costs money, or those parents don't want to talk to a Missouri City officer or Sugar Land officer or a county officer if it's something that happened on the school. And quite frankly, those officers aren't going to take a report if it's something that happened on the school. And as the chief administrator, I don't want to tell a parent, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait till tomorrow to report it to your officer at campus. That's not good customer service either. So we end up calling an officer out on overtime to come take that report, or we pull an officer who's working an athletic event somewhere in the district to go take that report. Well, now we've left that athletic event uncovered. So either way you go, it's really not a good situation, but we'll try to do the best we can with the resources we have. So we answered over 2,000 alarms last year. In 2013, ironically, we had 2,013 alarms. So that's easy to remember. But you know, those alarms are in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so when we look at it, about 17% of all of our calls for service come in on the weekends. We don't have anybody working on the weekends. So we need our own police patrol operation. And here's how we're going to help. Here are the kind of the functions that I'm thinking for those patrol operations. They'll work 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And our day shift patrol, which would be about half of the people that we hire for our full patrol operation, would be on day shift. Those day shift officers would be assigned to a geographic location. And those officers would have a group of elementary schools in that geographic location to focus on. because we already have officers at the middle schools, and we already have officers at the high schools. So if I have officers that can respond to elementary schools without pulling away from the middle schools and the high schools, then that helps the middle schools and the high school campuses. It keeps them where they need to be, protecting their kids and their staff, their campus. But I have now patrol officers that can respond to an elementary campus very, very quickly because they're in that area. And right now, we don't have that. So that, in conjunction with our other agencies that we partner with, will give us a much better response to our elementaries and a much more timely response. The other thing we'll do for our elementaries with those officers, those are still walkthroughs at those elementaries. That's part of their job, is to do walkthroughs, interact with the kids. I firmly believe that when we talk about school violence, the only way we're going to change that culture of violence is to interact with the elementary school kids and start from that age and have them exposed to an officer who cares about them and who they understand. They know they can come talk to the officer if they're having an issue instead of dealing with anger in a violent way. So getting into the elementary schools is a priority of ours, and we want to interact with those kids on a regular basis. And we want them to see our officers not in an enforcement mode, but in an education mode. And I tell our officers all the time, we are educators first. And that sounds funny coming from a cop, but we are in an education business. And so we work for an ISD. Our goal is to educate those kids. Our goal is to make sure they graduate. Our goal is not to arrest people. It's not to write tickets. That's not why we exist. Our goal is to make sure those students graduate. And so we educate those kids every single day by the way we talk, by the way we treat them, by the way we walk down the hall. And so the more times we can get in front of those students at the elementary level and get them to understand who we are and what our role is, then the more chance we have of keeping that violence out of our schools later on. So that's one of our goals from a day shift standpoint. On evening shift, we have over 3,200 students that are in our extended day program that are in our elementary schools until 6:30 in the evening. Again, we have no patrol. So nobody is there to make sure that those kids in the elementary schools that extended day have that level of protection that we want to make sure they have. So evening shift will do that. They will also take those calls for service that we talked about earlier, that the parents, are calling about. And then on night shift, again, we're about to put a lot of money into our buildings, and we already have a lot of assets in our buildings. And so we want our night shift to be proactive and check buildings on a regular basis, answer all those alarms that come in on night shift, because right now we have to send other agencies to answer our alarms. And quite frankly, another agency does not have a key to our building, and they don't have a code to our alarm. So they're not going to do anything when they get there, unless they just find a broken window with a sign that says, "I'm a burglar and I just came in here." Other than that, they're going to say it's all secure, and they're going to leave. And quite honestly, we get charged a false alarm fee by those other police agencies when they don't find a broken window or a broken door. So our night shift patrol will help us alleviate a lot of that. I will tell you that during the summertime, all of our officers come in and they work a 24-hour patrol during the summertime. So from the day after school lets out until the day before school starts, 2.5 months, we have a 24/7 patrol operation in our department. We expect our officers to walk our schools, our campuses, check the doors, go inside, look around, all the way around the clock. This past summer, our officers performed over 14,400 close patrols and foot patrols of our 74 campuses. 14,400 overnight in 2.5 months. That's the level of service our patrol officers give our district. And in that time, in all of our buildings, and in 2.5 months, we had one burglary and we caught it. So having a proactive patrol works. It works. So we want to get to that point so that we can protect our assets, and we can make sure that the schools are ready for business first thing in the morning, because our night patrols have been out there watching them all night long. Okay, that would require 12 officers and 2 sergeants, 14 people, and we can do that 365 days a year. Threat assessment teams. These are teams of individuals that are looking for behavioral indicators from students that are disturbing. What do I mean by that? I'm glad you asked. They have a student may turn in some disturbing artwork, okay? They may turn in an essay that is not like all the others. And so the teacher comes to us and says, I'm not sure what to do with this. That's where the threat assessment team comes in, because that kid is reaching out. And again, I think we need to get to the kids to address the root cause of the violence in our schools today, even if it's just fighting. But I think we need to get to that root cause. And so what we want to do is implement some threat assessment teams. I don't think it's going to require any additional staff, but we want a nurse, a counselor, an officer, an administrator, a teacher, all those people to be a part of this team. And so when the student turns that in, and the teacher goes to the counselor and says, hey, something's not right here, the counselor says, let me get the team together and let's talk about this. Because everybody's going to think about it from a different point of view. And so when we get our collective heads together, somebody's going to come up with a pretty good idea, probably out of that group, and say, these are the resources we need to get that child. These are some of the things we need to be thinking about. And so that team helps assess the threats that are made. We're looking at behavior, not the student. We're not trying to punish the student. We're trying to find out what the behavior is, what the reason for that behavior is. Maybe there's something going on at home. Maybe they're being bullied at school. But we don't know that just from a drawing or just from an essay. So we want that threat assessment team to do that job and identify what the root is and then get that student some help before it turns violent. So that's where the threat assessment team comes in. To get started in that, all of our officers will go through they're already scheduled to go through a 40-hour mental health officer certification course this summer. That course, I've been through it when I was in Austin. I'm a certified MHO. I couldn't tell you the least little thing about it though, I'll be honest with you, because if you don't use it, you lose it. And so, but with that, so that'll be a nice refresher for me. But what that course does is it'll help our officers when they see a student displaying some sort of behavior, they're going to be able to snap and go, okay, I remember that from training. Let me ask these specific questions, and now I can get some feedback that's beneficial and maybe get them to the right place. So that's what we're going to do to start this process to put these threat assessment teams in place. Our procedures, this is our fourth interrelated element. Our procedures are established written policies, guidelines, and this is the way all emergency operation plans are carried out. If we don't have good policies and procedures, you can throw the plans out the window. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is written down and is solid. So our first interrelated element here are our emergency operation plans. Every school, every facility in our district is required by law to have an emergency operation plan, or an EOP. That emergency operation plan addresses the 4 phases of emergency management, which are prevention and mitigation. How do we keep things from happening? The planning phase. Once it happens, what are we planning for next? The recovery phase, the response phase. How do we get there, and now what are we doing to stop it, and then the recovery phase. So I want you to think about how important it is to plan. In Columbine, everybody remembers the kids running out of the school in Columbine. Remember? They all came out running like this. What image does that portray? And what psychologically does that tell those students? See, the recovery phase starts when the incident happens. Recovery doesn't start after everybody leaves and it's a year later. Recovery starts immediately. And so we need to plan for those kind of things. We need to have that in our plan. So when you think about Columbine and those kids running out, that's what we tell people to do when they're under arrest, put your hands on your head. The whole point is the officers wanted to see those kids' hands. And hands is what's going to hurt you. So they wanted to see that. But those students have to live with the fact that they came out like this for the rest of their life. After Sandy Hook, do you remember how the kids came out of the building? They came out holding hands. What's the difference? They're unified, they're together, they're coming out together, and they're not in trouble, they're together. Can you still see their hands? Absolutely. If the chain breaks, can you see it? Absolutely. So those are the things that we need to think about and put in our plans. If we don't plan for that, we're just going to wing it when it happens, and it's not going to be good. So our plans are so important. They describe the roles and responsibilities of everybody involved and the redundancy built in. We go 3 deep in everything we do. So if somebody's supposed to be the incident commander, we're going to have a backup and a backup to them, because Murphy will be at every incident. and he will be running, trust me. And it's going to be organized chaos at best. And so we want to make sure that we have redundancy built into our plans and those emergency operations. Those plans get audited by law every 3 years. Our emergency management coordinator is doing that. And instead of doing all of them in the third year of the phase, we break them up into thirds, all of our schools in the thirds. So we do 1/3 1 year, the second third the second year, and the last third the third year, so that we can do a better job of making sure we get good quality audits instead of just saying, is it on paper? Okay, we'll check it out and we move on. That's not what we want. Okay. The standard response protocol. This is a, what's the word I'm looking for? It is it's a process. It's a protocol that's put into place by a gentleman out of Colorado. His daughter was the only person killed in the Platte Canyon High School incident where a drifter walked into a classroom and held a classroom hostage. And so he started this after that incident. And I actually went to his training and heard him speak and took a picture with him. He's an amazing guy. But basically what standard response protocol is 4 words. Lock down, lock out, evacuate, and shelter. And those are the 4 key terms that everybody needs to know in any type of emergency. And so if we can train our little kids and then train our middle school kids and our high school kids, those 4 things and what they mean and how to do them, that's very easy to do, then we have a standard response across the district. Every student, from the day they get to kindergarten until the day they graduate, is going to hear the same message. Every teacher hears the same message, and it's simple. And so we don't want to get complicated, we don't want to get convoluted, we want to make it simple and easy to train and to remember. So those are 4 actions, and that's all it is. And so we want to implement that here in the district, and the good news is, it's free. So all the information that we pull from the internet, from that site, is free. And if we want to buy the books and hand the teacher a book, it costs a little bit of money, I'll pay for it. Okay, it's worth it. But we can download that information for free. No additional staff is necessary, and it gives consistency to all of our students and all of our staff throughout their entire educational career. Safety and security audits. Again, this is mandated. It's every 3 years. Our audits include intruder assessments. Believe it or not, we actually send good guys into the school dressed as plain clothes. We have fake IDs that are made up, and we walk into the schools just to see. I want to know if we're going to be stopped in the school. Okay? And so we have people that do that every now and then, and it's not a gotcha. We tell the principals it's coming. And we tell them and tell them and tell them and tell them it's coming, so that by the time we get there, they're pretty vigilant about it, which is a good thing. We want them to be that way. But we do interior security checks, we do exterior security checks, and part of that audit is also the leadership in security and safety and security. We want to make sure that the principals and the administrators have gone through the right training, that they're well versed in emergency management, that they know what's going on and they know what the emergency operation plan says. We want all of our officers involved in the emergency operation plan, so if something happens, they know what's supposed to happen and where people are supposed to go. So our audit is based off of best practices. We use over 200 questions in our audit questionnaire. Very intensive. It takes several hours to complete. And so that's another function of that emergency management liaison will help our emergency management coordinator complete all those audits on those campuses. So those are conducted by our emergency management coordinator. Community engagement. This is where I turn it back over to Beth, and she's going to talk to you about community engagement. So thank you very much for listening, and go ahead.
All right, thank you. All right, as I said in the beginning, we so much appreciate your input and the input of the entire community throughout this process, because without that, you won't know where our starting point is. It's critical that we have the input of the community and concerns shared, and we're asking you tonight to give us your feedback in 2 ways. One, on an individual level, from that 40,000-foot view that Chief talked about in the beginning. So not just pertinent to your school where you may work or your school where your kids go, but in relation to the district as a whole. You're going to look, and you can download this, or not download, you can access this through the QR code or on the web and do it electronically with the information I gave you earlier, or you can do it by hand. They're being passed out now. But do this from a district-wide perspective. What impact